The morning sun barely peeked through the thick grey clouds that hung low over the small town. The streets, still damp from the previous night's rain, glistened under the muted light. A soft breeze carried the faint scent of wet earth and fading autumn leaves, creating a quiet yet melancholic atmosphere. Among the scattered debris lining the sidewalk, a small figure sat motionless, blending into the forgotten corners of the bustling world around it. It was a kitten, no older than a few weeks, its fragile body hunched against the cold. Its thin frame shivered with every gust of wind, and its matted fur clung to its tiny form. The kitten's eyes, once bright and curious, were half closed, dulled by exhaustion and hunger. It let out a feeble meow, a sound so faint it was swallowed by the noise of passing cars and distant footsteps. The street was alive with activity. Commuters hurried to catch their buses, their faces buried in their scarves against the chill. Shopkeepers rolled up shutters, setting out displays of fresh bread and colourful produce. Children laughed as they raced toward the nearby school, their backpacks bouncing with each step. Yet, amidst the energy of the town, no one seemed to notice the kitten's quiet plea for help. Hours passed, and the kitten remained rooted in its spot. Occasionally, it lifted its head, its ears twitching at the sound of approaching footsteps. But each time, the feet hurried past without so much as a glance. The world moved on, indifferent to the small life struggling to hold on. At the edge of the neighborhood, an elderly woman named Martha shuffled along the uneven pavement, her cane tapping rhythmically against the ground. Martha was well known in the community for her gentle nature and love for animals. Though her modest home was small and her resources limited, she had always opened her heart to those in need. Her grey hair was neatly tucked under a knitted hat, and her warm eyes scanned the ground as she walked, ever observant. Martha's morning routine was simple. She would take a short stroll to the park, where she liked to feed the birds with crumbs she saved from her meals. It was her quiet moment of peace, a reprieve from the solitude of her days. But today, as she neared the street corner, something caught her attention. The faintest sound, a weak, almost imperceptible cry, reached her ears. She paused, tilting her head to listen. The noise came again, fragile and pleading. Martha's brow furrowed as she turned toward the source, her eyes landing on the small, bedraggled figure nestled against the curb. "Oh, you poor thing," she murmured, her heart aching at the sight. Martha approached slowly, mindful not to startle the kitten. As she drew closer, the little creature lifted its head, its tired eyes meeting hers. The connection was immediate and profound. In that moment, Martha saw not just an abandoned animal, but a soul in desperate need of care and compassion. She crouched with difficulty, her knees protesting the motion, and extended a hand toward the kitten. "It's all right, little one," she said softly. "I won't hurt you." The kitten hesitated, its tiny body trembling as it considered whether to trust the stranger. After a moment, it inched closer, its nose twitching as it sniffed her outstretched fingers. Martha's heart swelled as she felt the soft brush of its fur against her hand. "You're so small," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "How long have you been out here?" The kitten meowed faintly, its voice a heartbreaking mix of desperation and hope. Without hesitation, Martha removed her scarf and gently wrapped it around the fragile creature, cradling it close to her chest. The kitten, though weak, nestled into the warmth, its tiny body relaxing slightly in her arms. As Martha made her way home, she couldn't help but think about the kitten's plight. How many others had walked past without stopping? How many had seen and chosen to ignore? The thought filled her with a quiet sadness, but also a renewed sense of purpose. This little life, so easily overlooked, deserved a second chance. By the time she reached her doorstep, the kitten had drifted into a fitful sleep, its small chest rising and falling against her own. Martha pushed open the door to her modest home, her heart already set on giving the tiny creature the care it so desperately needed. "Welcome home," she said softly as she stepped inside, her voice filled with determination. "You're safe now." Martha's home was modest but inviting, its walls lined with bookshelves and the scent of freshly brewed tea lingering in the air. As she gently unwrapped the scarf from around the kitten, she placed it on a soft towel she had laid out on the kitchen table. The tiny creature stirred, letting out a weak meow as it blinked up at her. "You must be starving," Martha murmured, her voice filled with concern. She rummaged through her cupboards, eventually finding a small saucer and pouring a bit of milk warmed with care. Though she knew it wasn't ideal nutrition, it was the best she could offer in the moment. Placing the saucer near the kitten, she watched as it sniffed cautiously before lapping at the milk. Each tiny sip seemed to revive it slightly, its frail body gaining just a hint of strength. Martha smiled softly, a flicker of hope igniting within her. "You're a fighter, aren't you?" she said, reaching out to gently stroke its head. The kitten leaned into her touch, a small but significant gesture that made her heart swell. As the evening wore on, Martha focused on cleaning the kitten's fur, removing the dirt and grime that had clung to it during its time on the streets. She worked carefully, using a damp cloth and warm water, her hands steady and patient. Though the kitten flinched at first, it soon relaxed under her gentle care. Underneath the layers of neglect, Martha began to see the tiny creature's true beauty. Its fur, though patchy in places, was soft and delicate. Its eyes, now fully open, gleamed with a mixture of curiosity and trust. "What shall we call you?" Martha wondered aloud as she dabbed at the kitten's paws. "You need a name, little one. Something strong like you." The kitten meowed softly, as if in response. Martha chuckled, the sound light and warm. "All right, how about Hope? That seems fitting." The name felt right. This tiny creature, against all odds, had found its way to her. In return, Martha was determined to give it a life filled with love and safety. The next few days were a whirlwind of adjustments for both Martha and Hope. Martha made an appointment with the local veterinarian, explaining the kitten's situation over the phone. The vet, a kind woman named Dr. Evans, agreed to see them immediately. When Martha arrived at the clinic, Hope nestled securely in a small blanket-lined basket. Dr. Evans greeted them with a warm smile. "Let's take a look at this little fighter," she said, her tone gentle. The examination revealed what Martha had feared. Hope was severely underweight and battling an infection that had likely been lingering for weeks. Despite the grim news, Dr. Evans reassured her. "She's weak, but she has a strong will. With the right care, she'll pull through." Martha nodded, her resolve strengthening. "Tell me what I need to do." Dr. Evans provided medications and a nutritional plan, along with words of encouragement. "She's lucky to have found you," she said as she handed over the supplies. "Not everyone would have stopped." Back at home, the routine of caring for Hope became Martha's new purpose. Each morning began with carefully administered medication, followed by small, nutritious meals designed to help the kitten regain its strength. Though the process was slow, Martha cherished every small victory, each purr, each playful swat of a paw, each step toward recovery. Hope, in turn, began to thrive under Martha's care. The once weak kitten now explored the small house with growing curiosity, its tiny paws padding softly across the floors. It claimed a spot by the window, where the sunlight streamed in, warming its fur as it dozed peacefully. Martha watched these moments with a mixture of pride and gratitude. Hope had brought new life to her quiet home, filling it with a sense of joy she hadn't realized she'd been missing. One afternoon, as Martha sat by the window with a cup of tea, she reflected on the moment she had found hope. How many others had walked past, oblivious to the kitten's plight? The thought saddened her, but it also filled her with a quiet determination. "You've taught me something," she said softly, glancing at the sleeping kitten curled up in her lap. "It only takes one person to make a difference." Hope's ears twitched, as if acknowledging her words. Martha smiled, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. For the first time in years, her heart felt whole. Weeks passed, and Hope's transformation was nothing short of miraculous. The frail kitten who had once clung to life on the streets was now a bundle of energy and curiosity. Her fur had grown thicker and shinier, her once dull eyes sparkled with mischief, and her tiny frame had filled out with strength. Martha could hardly believe how far she had come. Hope quickly established herself as the ruler of Martha's modest home. Every nook and cranny became an adventure, every sunbeam a place to nap. The window seat by the garden had become her favorite spot, where she'd perch for hours, watching the birds and butterflies flit about. Martha often joined her there, her hands busy with knitting or a cup of tea, their quiet companionship a source of deep comfort. "You've brought so much life into this house," Martha would say, scratching Hope under her chin. "I don't know what I did without you." Hope purred in response, her contentment a testament to the bond they had formed. Martha often marveled at how this tiny creature had filled the void in her life, giving her a sense of purpose she hadn't realized she'd been missing. Word of Hope's rescue began to spread through the neighborhood. The story of the abandoned kitten who had been given a second chance resonated deeply with those who heard it. Neighbors who had once only exchanged polite greetings with Martha now stopped to ask about Hope, their curiosity piqued by the kitten's resilience. One morning, as Martha walked to the local bakery, a young boy approached her hesitantly. He clutched a small box in his hands, his expression a mix of worry and determination. "Excuse me," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Are you the lady who saved the kitten?" Martha smiled gently, nodding. "Yes, that's me. Her name is Hope." The boy opened the box slightly, revealing a small, frightened kitten inside. Its fur was scruffy, and its wide eyes darted around nervously. "I found her near the park," he explained. "She was all alone, like your cat. I didn't know what to do." Martha's heart swelled with compassion. "You did the right thing by bringing her to me," she said. "Let's take her inside and make sure she's okay." Hope seemed to sense the arrival of another in need. As Martha carefully placed the new kitten in a soft blanket, Hope approached cautiously, her tail flicking with curiosity. She sniffed the tiny stranger before letting out a soft, welcoming purr. The new kitten, though timid, relaxed slightly under Hope's watchful gaze. From that day on, Martha found herself at the center of a small but growing network of animal lovers. Neighbors and strangers alike began bringing strays to her, inspired by her care and determination. Though her home was humble, Martha opened it willingly, creating a space where abandoned animals could find safety and love. Hope thrived in her new role as the unofficial caretaker of the newcomers. She greeted each new arrival with curiosity and warmth, her calm demeanor helping to soothe even the most frightened animals. Martha often watched in amazement as Hope curled up beside nervous kittens, her steady purring lulling them to sleep. "You've become quite the little guardian," Martha would say, her voice filled with pride. "I think you were meant to help others, just like you were helped." Hope's story continued to inspire the community. Local children came by to visit, eager to meet the famous kitten who had defied the odds. Some even volunteered to help Martha with feeding and cleaning, their young hearts eager to make a difference. One afternoon, Dr. Evans stopped by to check on Hope and the other animals in Martha's care. As she examined each one, she couldn't hide her admiration. "You've created something truly special here," she said, her eyes shining. "These animals are lucky to have found you." Martha shook her head, her gaze resting on Hope, who was curled up in a patch of sunlight. "They've given me just as much as I've given them," she said. "Hope reminded me that no life is too small to matter. She saved me as much as I saved her." Dr. Evans smiled, placing a hand on Martha's shoulder. "Not everyone would have stopped that day," she said, "but you did. And because of that, you've created a ripple of kindness that's touched so many lives." As the evening settled in, Martha sat by the window with Hope in her lap, watching the first stars appear in the sky. Her heart was full, her life enriched by the tiny creature who had once been a shadow on the street. Hope had not only found a home, but had also sparked a community of compassion. "You've done so much, little one," Martha whispered, stroking Hope's fur. "And this is just the beginning." Hope purred softly, her warmth spreading through Martha like a quiet promise. Together, they had turned a moment of despair into a story of resilience, love, and the power of small acts of kindness. Hope's story didn't just change Martha's life, it rippled through the town like a gentle wave of compassion. What started as one small act of kindness grew into something extraordinary. Families began adopting pets from shelters, inspired by the transformation of the tiny kitten who had once been so close to giving up. Local businesses joined the movement, donating food and supplies to support Martha's growing mission. The neighborhood that had once walked past an abandoned kitten without a second glance now rallied together, proving that change could begin with the simplest of actions. Hope, now fully recovered, became the heart of this movement. Children adored her, visiting Martha's home to play with the lively cat who had beaten the odds. "She's so brave," they would say, stroking Hope's soft fur as she purred happily. Martha's modest home transformed into a community hub. Stray animals found safety within its walls, and volunteers of all ages offered their time to help care for them. Hope acted as a guide, her calm and affectionate demeanor reassuring new arrivals. "You've become quite the little leader," Martha often told her, watching with pride as Hope curled around a nervous kitten or comforted a scared puppy. One crisp autumn day, Martha stood on her porch and gazed at the bustling activity around her. Volunteers carried supplies, children laughed as they played with the animals, and Hope sat regally in her favorite spot by the window. The once quiet house was now filled with life and purpose. Dr. Evans stopped by to check on the animals, her admiration for Martha evident. "You've created something incredible here," she said. "This community has changed because of you and because of Hope." Martha smiled, her gaze resting on the cat who had brought so much light into her life. "She taught me that even the smallest lives can make the biggest difference." Dr. Evans nodded. "And you've shown everyone that a little kindness can go a long way." That evening, as Martha and Hope sat together under the stars, she reflected on how far they had come. The kitten who had been so close to the brink had not only survived, but had inspired a movement of love and care. Hope had become a symbol, a reminder that no life was too small to matter. Years passed, but the story of Hope and Martha continued to inspire. The town, once indifferent to the plight of strays, had become a haven for animals in need. The shelter Martha had built in her home grew into a full-fledged rescue center, supported by the community she had touched so deeply. Hope, now older but no less spirited, remained the soul of the rescue. Her days were spent lounging in sunbeams, welcoming visitors, and mentoring new animals. Her once timid purr had grown stronger, a steady rhythm that brought comfort to everyone who heard it. Martha, too, found herself transformed. What had begun as a quiet life had blossomed into one filled with connection and meaning. The friendships she had formed, the lives she had saved, and the love she had shared with Hope were more than she could have ever dreamed. One day, as Martha prepared to speak at a local event about her journey, she found herself reflecting on that cold morning when she first heard Hope's faint cry. "You changed everything, little one," she whispered to Hope, who sat beside her. "Because of you, I found my purpose." Hope nuzzled her hand, her eyes shining with affection. Their bond, forged in adversity, had only grown stronger with time. As Martha stood before the crowd, she spoke with gratitude and conviction. "Hope reminded me that every life matters," she said. "Her story is proof that even the smallest acts of kindness can create a ripple effect, changing not just one life, but countless others." The audience erupted into applause, their faces filled with admiration and inspiration. Martha's words resonated deeply, a reminder that compassion could transform not just individuals, but entire communities. That evening, as Martha and Hope sat on their porch watching the sunset, she felt a profound sense of peace. The world was a brighter place because of Hope, and Martha knew their journey was far from over. Together, they had created a legacy of kindness, one that would continue to inspire for generations to come. If this story of hope, resilience, and the power of kindness touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep spreading the light and creating a world where every life matters.